Last week, I posted my findings on what the best DPS setups are in the game now that the sandbox will mostly remain the same due to the game not receiving any more updates. And I promise this wasn't intentional, but there was a clear lack of Warlock representation inside of this video, as evident by the many comments you left, and rest assured this has fully been taken into account. Because today, not only am I going to take you through the best DPS setups for Warlocks, I'm going to do my best to also explain how Warlocks fit into the DPS ecosystem as a whole, as well as what artifacts to use, which set bonuses work best, and everything in between. So to my Warlocks, I do hope you can sincerely accept my apology, and without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how the Warlocks fit into the DPS ecosystem, that last part of the intro, because this is important as a preface to everything else that we're going to talk about in the video. So, Warlocks, you are good for three things. Number one, Well of Radiance. You guys have literally got the Well of Radiance, the damage buff and the healing pool. It is never not going to be meta. It is still in the game. It still exists. It is still very good. It is the easiest way to get a long-lasting 35% damage buff. That is one of your roles. Number two, you can also be a straight-up damager. You are very good at being a damager, and also with some added utility as well. And then third, you go full utility, which is either you being the tractor person, the divinity person, or the Fafnir person now that we have that. And it is going to be your job in that role to make sure that the debuff stays up and that you also manage to do a little bit of damage yourself, but obviously it is going to be reduced because of the nature of the weapons you are using. But in this video, I am going to show you how to do the most damage in that situation if that is your role. So again, three roles: the well guy, the damager, and the debuff guy. And we're going to go through all of these three roles, and I'm going to explain in the best way I can how to optimize the hell out of each and every one of them. So we are going to start with the Well of Radiance guy. And the thing that people often confuse is that if you are the well guy, you have to be the one using tractor. You have to be the one using div. And that isn't necessarily true. In fact, it shouldn't be true in most cases, because it is a lot to bear as a single person. If you are the well guy, the buffer, and the debuffer at the exact same time, you can split this off. You can be a bit more strategic about it if you have multiple Warlocks on your team. So the approach that I'm taking here today is we are starting with the Well of Radiance Warlock, but we are also going to be part damage. We are not going to be the debuffer. We are not using tractor cannon or Fafnir on this. We're going to be doing damage at the same time, because it is important that your Warlocks, even the support roles, still manage to get their damage up. So for the first rotation that we are going to discuss, we have two very meta weapons along with a meta set bonus plus good stats. Those being the heavy sniper, the refurbished A499, and then the Izanagi's Burden. And this is going to work very well into this setup because of our set bonus. And if you watched the video from last week, you'll know that across the entire game, the refurbished A499 is just one of the best guns in the game, especially if you pair it with the encrypted data disk, which has the Sniper's Meditation artifact perk. It also has quality of life, such as reload at range, and kinetic synthesis to improve the lifetime of your rotations as well. Sniper's Meditation is also present on the Hunter's Journal. However, this one doesn't really have that many other good perks in it for damage. I do think the encrypted data disk is better. You do have incendiary rifle rounds on here, but this is more something for like a still hunt hunter with solar snipers instead. So that is why I think the encrypted data disk is more optimal for this. And we're going to be pairing both of these weapons with the full 4-piece Spire of the Watcher set bonus. And the reason for that is because it has the 4-piece bonus High Noon, which states freshly drawn weapons deal increased precision damage to combatants for a short period. Weapons with the Tex Balance Stock origin trait equipped or exotics manufactured by the Tex Mechanica Foundry gain further increased benefits. Now, we don't care about the last part because we're not using Tex Mechanica weapons. However, we do care about the increased precision damage from freshly drawn weapons. And the way this buff works is that if I equip my Izanagi's Burden, I get High Noon on the left of my screen for about 4 seconds. And this is something that refreshes every time you swap weapons. So if I swap to my heavy sniper, I've got 3 more seconds. If I swap to my middle gun, I've got another 3, then another 3 here. I can just keep swapping. And this boost in damage is a 7% buff. So it's not a lot, but it is better than nothing. And there are no other set bonuses really that benefit this rotation as well. And we are going to be factoring in that buff into our rotation. Before I show you how to do the rotation, we're also going to cover what the exotic is going to be here. These are the Boots of the Assembler, because as the Solar Warlock, your job is going to be distributing the highest potency buffs to your team, which is only available through Boots of the Assembler. This is a 35% buff to all of your team's weapon damage. And little known fact, if you are hit by one of the Blessing of Order Seekers, you also gain plus 100 class stat. Little known fact, so just they're throwing that out there if you didn't know that. But we are going to be taking Boots of the Assembler. There's basically no other exotic you ought to be using using on Solar Warlock. So the rotation itself is basically going to be using Izanagi's Burden with the High Noon buff to get High Noon on the ×4 shots as often as you can, and then when you run out of Izanagi ammo, you just dump the rest of your heavy sniper. So as for a quick demo of the rotation, you would simply place your well and then get your Izzy out, hone it, you can do this before damage as well, shoot the Izzy and then re-hone it, put it away, and in this time of High Noon on the heavy sniper, you can shoot 2 bullets, back to Izzy, re-hone, then go 2 bullets here, then back to Izzy, and repeat. That's basically the entire process. You'll have another 2 Izzy shots to do in there, but because High Noon lasts for 4 seconds, you do have enough time to get your honed edge off, re-hone it, then 2 shots of heavy snipe, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, in terms of the stats that you need for this rotation, of course, you want to go with as high super and weapons as possible, which involves getting a lot of powerhouse armor pieces, so make sure you have powerhouse armor on your ghost. Currently, I have 175 weapons and 150 super with my setup, which I can make up to 200 super by putting 3 super fonts on my helmet, which is going to make my Well of Radiance last for 40 seconds instead of 30, and then 175 weapons is good. It could be higher if I had better tunings. It could be around 185, 190 kind of way. And then ideally, you also get tertiary stats in class to boost the regen rate of your class ability, because if you are using Hellion, which you should be, you have an extra source of damage there by casting your class ability. The actual fragments and aspects for this build don't matter too much. This is just general Solar Warlock stuff. This is the setup that I run whenever I play Solar Warlock. It's Hellion, Icarus Dash, then I have Singeing, Benevolence, Ashes, Torches, and Searing. But don't worry, I will have the dim links for these builds down in the description, so you don't have to listen to me yapping about these aspects and fragments. Just know that these are the ones that are pretty good. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, you are going to want to be using the encrypted data disk for basically everything. This artifact is very good for damage, especially in the case of snipers. You know, Sniper's Meditation, we have Kinetic Rupture as well. We also have Kinetic Synthesis and Reload at range. Now, what I'm going to do here is show you a clip of the full damage rotation that is, you know, fully optimal conditions. We have a tractor going, we have surges, everything, just to give you an idea of what it looks like and show you the numbers. Okie dokie. Yeah, you can track whenever.
Tractor needle.
Q. Shooting 2 shots, I think that's like enough within the High Noon window. Oh, perfect reload cancels. Okay. Stop shooting there. So in around 40 seconds or so, we have a DPS of anywhere between 4 and 5k with a total of 200k, which is very, very good for your Solar Warlock in particular, because, you know, they don't have a damage super. So then being able to pull numbers like this is very, very good. So I hope that this shows you that even though in your head, you might think that Solar Warlocks are not really your damage dealers, this is an example of how you can drastically improve that by just grinding some of the new armor and then getting the right rolls on some of the weapons. By the way, all you need on a heavy sniper is aggregate charge and accelerated assault. The shiny variant, everything else doesn't matter. That's all you need. So that is going to do it for the Solar Warlocks. And now we are going to move on to the Damager. Basically the Warlock build that you just want to hop on if you already have somebody on a Solar Warlock, you play Warlock and you just want to do some damage. What is the best option for that? Well, it is going to be one of 2 options. 1, you're going to be on Prismatic, or 2, you can be on Strand. And the reason for that is because of the Needle Storm super when paired with the Matiodoxia exotic chest piece. This chest piece basically allows your Matiodoxia to hit at the same level as a Curious Thunder Crash from the Titan. It is very, very close. In fact, if you go and check out the super testing video we did last week, you'll see that the numbers, they're only about 1,000 apart. And you can also get it sometimes where the Matiodoxia explosion happens twice, so it does more. But basically, just think of this as the Warlock's equivalent of Curious. And actually, the setup here is basically the same as the one from the Solar Warlock. We are again using Izanagi's Burden with the heavy sniper, with the full 4-piece Spire of the Watcher armor, again making use of those swaps. And this time, because we are on Prismatic, my stats are going to be slightly better. I have 185 weapons this time alongside 150 super, again made to 200 with these super fonts on my helmet. But there are a couple key differences about Prismatic Warlock compared to Solar that you ought to be aware of in terms of this, you know, the whole where do Warlocks fit into the meta picture. And one of the things that they are actually very, very good at is extending debuffs. So if you didn't know this, debuffs created by Fafnir, by Felwinter's Helm, by Tractor Cannon, they can be extended by applying Void, Weaken, or Weak weaker weakens, in this case the 15%, that come from things like Vortex Grenade when paired with Facet of Dominance, or the Freezing Singularity. So the Warlock has 2 grenades that they can use to debuff extend. So we are initially applying a 30% debuff, and then we, as the Warlock, are helping to extend that by applying our own slightly less potent weakens, like from the grenades that we have. And that is something that if you are playing Prismatic Warlock, you ought to just do in the case that your tractor player has their tractor go down, maybe they're teleported away, maybe they die or something like that. You being there as a backup to extend their debuff is very, very nice during longer damage phases especially. So the rotation here is going to look a little bit different. It's going to look a little something like this. We're going to pop our Transcendence. I'm going to start with a Needle and a Nade, go into my Super, then it's going to be Izzy, Hone, and then we're off like normal, but every once in a while just throw in like a Needle here and there to make sure that you can get your grenade back. I'll do another 2 shots of my Heavy Sniper here, Needle, Nade, then I'll go back into Izzy, then I'll go back into my Heavy Snipe, throw a Needle here, back into Heavy Snipe. When my Transcendence ends, I also have my Void Grenade ready to weaken or to extend any weakens that are present on the boss, so I can continue doing this over and over again. And you get the idea. Just go between Izzy and the Heavy Sniper, but this time, because you are on Prismatic, just weave in a couple melees, a couple grenades here and there to help out your teammate who happens to be on the main debuff role. Again, the artifact for the Prismatic Damager Warlock is going to be the exact same as before. We're using the encrypted data disk with kinetic synthesis, reload at range, kinetic rupture, and sniper's meditation for the bonus sniper damage. Now I'm going to show you a full clip of what the DPS looks like in an optimal setting.
3, 2, 1.
That's fine. Just empty my Heavy Snipe. Nice. So, as you can imagine, the DPS and total is a fair bit higher because we have a whole damage super added this time. Plus, with Transcendence, we are dealing slightly more weapon damage anyway because that's just what it does by default. So now we are hitting upwards of 4.7k DPS and around 220 to 230k total. But, of course, we do have the added benefit of being able to extend debuffs from other players. Quickly looking at the subclass, again, this doesn't really matter too much because I will have the dim links to all of these in the description box below, but I am running Feed the Void, Weaver's Call, I have Facet of Ruin on here, Protection, Hope, and Dominance, plus Courage as well. And by the way, I will also leave a link in the description box down below to a website I use to calculate armor setups that I want, basically armor stat amounts that I want, like 185 weapons and 150 super, and then it tells me which armor pieces I need to go and farm with the distribution that I created. I'll leave a link to that website, very handy website, link in the description box down below. Okay, so finally, for the third role of the Warlocks, you are going to be the Debuffer. This is the Debuffer role. You are using either Tractor Cannon or Fafnir, and you are making sure that that debuff stays up the whole time while also trying to do as much damage yourself as possible. And I'm going to show you how to do that here. So again, the setup is going to be very similar to before. We have the exact same artifact. I have the exact same stat distribution, the exact same set bonus, which is the one from Spire of the Watcher. Again, Matiodoxia here, and we are on Prismatic Warlock. Now, like I said, remember, it is a lot better to have your debuffer be on a Prismatic Warlock rather than the Solar Warlock because they can support their lack of damage setup a lot better with the tools they have access to. They actually have a damage super, they have Transcendence, they have ways to extend the debuff if the boss is further away, and in general are just a lot more fit for the job. So the setup for the subclass remains the exact same. We are again taking Needle Storm with Matiodoxia to make sure we have a good hard-hitting super, but this time our heavy weapon is replaced with Tractor Cannon. Depends on the boss you are fighting on whether you want to choose Fafnir or Tractor. Tractor most of the time, try and force it though because it does just last longer. Tractor's debuff lasts for 10 seconds, whereas Fafnir's only lasts for 5. Yes, you can extend the Fafnir one by shooting the gun more, but you don't really want to be doing that because you run out of ammo really quickly. So in terms of the other weapons that I have here now to support the playstyle, I have gone with a Null Composure, which has been recently reprised, and by the way, this weapon does have access to Accelerated Assault, meaning it can do even more damage. I have got the role of Envious Arsenal and Elemental Honing on here because, fun fact, another thing about Prismatic Warlocks is that they are very easy classes to use to stack up Elemental Honing. They just have so many elements in just their Prismatic kit. You've got Void and Stasis from your Freezing Singularity, you have Strand from your Needle Storm. If you're running Hellion, you have Solar from that, and then Arc is easy if you're using something like a Getaway Artist in neutral game. Then for my main damage dealer, I am taking the Conspiracy Honed Sniper Rifle from the Equilibrium dungeon. This thing is very, very good, and I would recommend anyone to go and get this weapon if you don't have it yet, because with snipers being as good as they are in the current meta, this one is just one of the best. Because if you didn't know, dynamic heat weapons, and in the case of this sniper, they just deal a ton more damage to bosses by default. And I believe for Conspiracy Honed, it is literally like 50% more damage compared to standard rapid fire snipers, especially if you have the god roll of Ionized Heatsink, Vorpal Weapon, and Bait and Switch. By the way, the Null Composure here, you can swap this for whatever you like. You can use a primary in this slot, you can use a rocket pulse, a trace rifle. I just think this one is the most optimal for me. I think it works well into the rotation, but this isn't necessarily strict, so if you don't have this weapon, don't worry about it. The one you absolutely must have is the sniper though, just letting you know. So for the rotation, it is going to look slightly different because we are going to be managing the bait and switch timer on our sniper, and it's going to look a little something like this. We're going to pop Transcendence, go into Nade and Melee, I'm going to go into Super here, apply Tractor, going to do one shot of fusion, then activate the dynamic heat limiter, go and empty the rest of my magazine here, should be around 13 shots or so, and then once that's done, I can melee nade, Tractor here, I'm going to go into 3 shots of my fusion, just to make sure that the bait and switch runs out on my sniper, then go back into the sniper, bait and switch is reactivated, and I can empty the rest of my reserves here, back into Tractor, melee nade, and then I'll just dump the rest of my fusion or whatever other weapon I have in this case here. Because at this point, you have done basically all you can. The total damage that you juiced out of your Conspiracy Honed is going to be the majority of your damage. As you can see here, it's around 93k. Obviously, you do have to accept that being the Tractor role, you do just do less damage than anybody else. That's just a hard reality that you have to face. But that shouldn't stop you in trying to do your best compared to your other teammates. That is where the Conspiracy Honed comes in, and then another special weapon in this case, which for me is Null Composure, which has a decent bit of total as well. But of course, the main thing about this setup is making sure you are on top of debuffs and also keeping them extended depending on where the boss is. You know, it might be like an Argos situation where it's very awkward to Tractor him, so you Tractor him once, run away, and then use your grenades to extend the debuff in the meantime. Again, I probably already mentioned it, but we are using the Spire of the Watcher set bonus here one more time because it just is nice to have as an added bonus. The Vault of Glass set actually might be more suitable for the Tractor player just because they are already on a support type role, so having them make more orbs might be more beneficial, because the 4-piece for Vault of Glass makes it so dealing direct damage just spawns orbs under you, which is very, very good. Those are the 2 main sets that you are really looking for during damage, is Vogue and the full Spire of the Watcher. There's nothing really else that kind of comes close, but I think Spire of the Watcher is just universally good. It's just a bonus that you don't even have to think about. So putting it all together, this is what the rotation for the Tractor player looks like.
Yep. This limiter. Okay, 1, 2, 3, bang. 2. Yeah. That.
So obviously the DPS and total is a fair bit lower. It's around 3.5k DPS and then around 120k total or thereabouts. But like I said, that is the reality of being on the Tractor Warlock. That's just how it's going to be, but that is definitely good enough. But that is going to do it for the best DPS builds for the Warlock that I believe you should be running right now as a Warlock. And I hope that I explained well enough how Warlocks do fit into the sandbox, because they are essential. You know, you can't really get through a raid without a Warlock. Everybody needs a well, everybody needs a debuff, and everybody appreciates creates high damage, and it can come from a Warlock. So I hope you guys learned something from today's video. If you do have any questions about any of this, definitely drop them down in the comments below. I will leave the dim links to all of these builds down in the description box below for you to copy. And also do check out that armor picker website, which lets you see what armor pieces you need to farm for a given stat distribution that you want. But that is going to do it for today's video, guys. So again, thank you very much for coming and watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.